Alright, welcome back 6th graders. Today we're looking at dividing decimals by whole numbers. By the end of today's lesson, you want to be able to divide decimals by whole numbers. Let's look at a real world example to kind of start us out. So if I have 8/10 of a cake left and I want to split it equally between 4 people, I want to know how much of the cake each person would get. So once again, we're looking at our 100s chart or grid. So each square is worth 1/10, which means each square is worth 1/100th, which means each long is worth 1/10. So if I'm looking at 8/10, here this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's my 8/10 of the cake that's left, and I want to divide it equally among 4. Well, in that case, I would have 8 sections divided by 4, so each person would get 2 sections. So I'd have the 8 sections divided by 4 people, which means it's 2 sections per person, and since each section is worth 1/10, each person would get 2/10 of the cake. And the nice thing to remember is that we can always use estimation to check if our answers are reasonable. So let's find the quotient for each problem. So our first one is we have 48 and 78/100ths, and we're dividing by 6. The nice thing when we're dividing a decimal by an integer or a whole number is you're simply going to do your division, and the decimal is just going to come straight up, and you're going to divide as you normally would with your long division. So 6 goes into 48 8 times, which would be 48, leaving us no leftovers. 6 goes into 7 once. 6 goes into 18 3 times. Since I'm left with 0 down here, I don't have to add any additional zeros at the end. So our answer is simply 8 and 13/100ths. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video at this point and try the next two on your own and then check and see how you did. In our next problem, we're taking 18/100ths and I'm dividing it by 2. If you wanted to put the 0 in front of the 18, you could. I did not choose to. Decimal point's going to come straight up and be lined up. 2 does not go into 1, but it does go into 18 9 times. So our answer would just be 9/100ths. Right, and then 71 and 6/100ths divided by 34. 34 goes into 71 twice. I'm going to actually move this down. Okay, I would start by always bringing your decimal point up just so you don't forget where it is. But anyway, so 34 goes into 71 twice, which would be 68, which leaves us with a 3. Bring down the 0. 34 cannot go into 30, so I'm going to put a 0 there and just bring down my 6 as well. 34 goes into 306. We'll say I'm going to try a 9. Okay, so 34 times 9, this would be 27, 306. So no leftovers, so our final answer would be 2 9/100. Now let's look at a couple word problem examples. If you want, you can pause the video and try both these out on your own, or otherwise you can follow along on the first one and then pause the video for the second one. For Miss Hoff's birthday, our class decided to buy her a pendant for $76.50 and a card for $2.25. There are 25 students in the class. What is the average amount each student paid for the gift? Well, first thing we need to figure out is what total we paid. So we'd have to add the $76.50 and the $2.25. Remember, when we're adding decimals, we have to line up our decimal point. So 78.75 is the total. Now, because we're finding the average amount, we're taking that amount and we're dividing it among the 25 students. So 78.75 dividing by 25. I'm going to bring my decimal point up right away. 25 goes into 75 3 times. Or 25 goes into 78 3 times, which would be 75. Leaving us with 3 left over. 25 goes into 37 once. Which leaves us with 125. 25 goes into 125 5 times, thinking like quarters. So each student paid $3.15. Like I said, if you haven't paused the video yet, I would pause the video for this next one and try it on your own. You can buy juice by the bottle or by the case. Either way, it costs the same for each bottle. A case of 24 bottles costs $25.52, and if I bought a bag of peanuts for 75 cents and 1 bottle of juice, how much did I spend in all? First, I need to figure out how much I paid for just my bottle of juice. So I'm going to take my $25.52 and divide it by, if I was buying the 24 bottles, because that's the price for a case. 24 goes into 25 once. Does not go into 15. I'm going to go and bring down the 2. 24 goes into 152. Estimate and say 7 times. Let's see, 24 times 7. Would be 158, so that's too much, so we need to actually drop this down to a 6. Oops. Okay, 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 2 is 12. 144. Going to subtract that out. With 8 cents left over, go ahead and add in a 0. 24 will go into 80. 3 times, which would be 72. You'd have 8 left over again. At this point, because we're doing cost, you typically are going to round to the nearest hundredth. So since the 3 tells us to round down, on average we'd pay $1.06 per bottle, but then I also have the 75 cents I paid for my bag of peanuts. So I'm going to line up my decimal points and add that up. So in the end, for both, I would have paid $1.81 for my bottle of juice and my bag of peanuts.